In this community, we call this day Commitment Sunday, as Claire said, and it's when all those who participate in the community consider how they will respond to God's call in their life in this year to come. I want to share with you 4 insights that I got through just sitting with this reading over the past couple of weeks and how it relates to this life of the community that we have here called KC. The first thing that caught my attention was that Solomon is kneeling, and he's on his knees. Well, what does that mean? They tell us that he's saying prayers and supplications. Well, first, if you're a recovering Catholic, as Jack Dunleavy, our beloved friend, says, kneeling was something we did very often. And many outside of the Catholic Church who would have to come to like a funeral or some other event would be like, why do you kneel so much? Well, in the Old Testament, kneeling was a sign of reverence. And in some traditions, prostration, which was what Vicky was talking about, prayer was a way of engaging the body in such a way that our thoughts and emotions would drop away. And so that we would then be an open vessel for God to inhabit us. We're also told that Solomon spreads his hands out wide, up to the heavens. And again, that was a familiar prayer posture that was a gesture of allowing, of surrendering, of opening up and being receptive to God and preparing ourselves for God to enter. In our Everyday Mystic Care group, we start off, mind you, at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning with a body prayer, announcing ourselves to one another and to God that we are fully present. And it goes like this. Sharon's going to model it for us. I'll say the words and Sharon's going to do the body. So I am here. I am here. I am here. I am here. And then we all respond with one word or two in this moment, I am. So this sense of preparing ourselves, Solomon, in a way, was preparing himself to hear and to be present to God. In many ways, he knew that he needed to do that to be able to have God speak through him. So it raises a question for us, what practice, how do we engage our whole selves in allowing God to be in our lives on a day-to-day basis, right? What do we do to invite God in? And what do we do to allow God to be with us every single moment of the day? God is a relational God. Right? God wants to be in relationships. The Israelites entered into covenant with God. God desires to be in relationship with us. And the question really for us today is, do you desire to be in relationship with God? If you say yes, then what will that practice be for you? My second reflection. Earlier in the passage, Solomon calls together, I love this description, he summons the elders of Israel, the tribal leaders, the heads of the families of the people of Israel, all to come and bring the Ark of the Covenant from Zion to Jerusalem. After 46 years, yes, it took 46 years to build the temple, this was the day that they were going to gather from near and far in a communal ritual of dedication and celebration. Almost instantly when I thought of this, I thought of the pictures on our website. Remember the pictures that show KC, this beautiful home that was built for us. The barn was bought in 1972 and renovations done by members and their families and friends began on Labor Day of 1973 and was finished for a grand opening on April 10th, Easter Sunday in 1977. So can you do the math for me on that? 72 to 77, 5 years. So it didn't take as long as the temple. There are still members here today, and I see Sarah back there, who were here. They were among those who gave of their time, their resources, their talents, their blood, sweat, and I would think at times tears, to ready this space as a sanctuary for God and to give to us, the people of God, this space. What a day that must have been. I can only imagine the sense of excitement, the pride, the gratitude, the sense of we finally have a home and we can call it our own. Yes, this is our home. And yes, the temple was the Israelites' home. But we heard both Friday and Saturday this week. As we were here, Friday night was Friday Night Live and we were online. Saturday, we were here in the building and we were on Zoom. That this building is more than just a piece of land, and it's a building. It's not just a building, it's a building that enables us to come together week after week to be nourished by each other's presence. While praying alone is just as nourishing, praying together, being together as we are today is what this building is all about. Our connection to one another is the lifeblood of this community. And we have the opportunity to do what you just did for me, and I hope for everyone else today, is to join in unity with me, with us, one another, and share a little love that we all need to sustain us in our relationship with God, with others, and with ourselves every time we gather. It's not just about the music. It's not about the sharing. It's not about the prayers. It's not just what you get, but it's what you receive and how collectively we are touched by each other's presence. It is in the communal gathering. And I don't just mean in person, I mean with Zoom, because there's an intimacy on Zoom that we've discovered that is as wonderful as being here. It is in the communal gathering that we encounter love incarnate through our being with each other. And this strengthens us to go out and do our service and bring God's love throughout the actions into the world, to serve one another. The tending of our building continues, yet I fear with these years in COVID, we've waned in our appreciation for the importance and power of being in a spiritual community. The uniqueness of KC is not a building, but it is the people who seek to be in relationship with one another, to nurture one another and to be nurtured by others, to enrich and be enriched, to serve and to serve, to be served, to support and be supported on our individual and collective journeys. We have to be willing to show up and choose to be in relationship with one another for this community to truly realize its ongoing mission in this world. Not one of us can do it alone. Reflection 3. Solomon reminds the people of their ancestors and the importance of remembering that their journeys have paved the way for us. It was the ancestors who made the covenant with God. It was the ancestors who wandered in the desert, struggling with their faith, losing their way, and yet God never left them. They thought he did, but Solomon reminds them that God always fulfills her promises. We who are present today in this community have ancestors who have paved the way for us and modeled faithfulness, resiliency, forward-looking, and love to all of us. So what do our ancestors ask of us today? I want to share an experience that I had on the evening when the callers came together in late September. It was the invitation for us to come together to begin to talk about the KC visioning future for the future, to be in dialogue, how to engage the community in dialogue for that. I was sitting in a room of boxes. I had been all day unpacking boxes for my sister and her husband in Pennsylvania, who had just moved into a new house. And we had had dinner. I came back. I found a small little corner in the room that wasn't covered by boxes, and I got on Zoom. I just knew it was important for me to be there. We had a great conversation, but there were lots of questions. And it wasn't until sort of the last 30 minutes that we entered into a guided meditation. And we were asked to breathe, just as I asked you. We were asked to connect our hearts together. And then we were asked to see ourselves in a field. And there were 5 doors. And pick one of those doors. As I opened my door, there was before me a long aisle, but on each side of the aisle were scores of people. And while I couldn't see their faces, I knew immediately that I was in the presence of the ancestors of KC and the Church of the Savior. I could see a distance away a large chair and someone in the chair, and the question arose in me, oh, I wonder if that's Gordon Cosby, and I'm going to get to see him. As I moved closer to the chair, I still wasn't able to see who was there, but I heard a voice say to me, open your eyes to what is before you, let go of what is behind you. I stopped and just let the presence of those in the room surround me. I wanted to hear more, but we were called back to meditation. What I think the ancestors are asking of us is similar to what Solomon was asking of God, that we honor the journeys of our ancestors by carrying forward their work into today's world moving forward, and that we do as they did, remain faithful to our commitment to God and to each other, that we continue to gather together to be strengthened and nourished on our individual and collective journeys, and that we, with dogged persistence, heed God's call for us to be vessels of love in this day and the days to come. What I was reminded in my encounter with our ancestors was that we must be, in our individual and collective prayers, continue to listen and turn to the ancestors to inform and guide our movement forward. Lastly, I think the reflection that I had, the insights that I had, was probably the most impactful, and I hope for you gives you something to chew on. Twice in the reading, Solomon, he turns and says, to God to help us to turn our hearts inward. All right. And it says, turn our hearts inward so that our hearts will be fully committed to Yahweh. Well, it doesn't say our heads or our heart or our bodies. So there's something about the heart that is important here. When I think of being committed, I think of the things I've decided I would do, could do, or should do, right? That if I do them, there'll be something that will happen. There'll be some outcome. Take the KC commitments, right? We commit to, Claire shared with us the 5 commitments, right? But I don't know about you, but rarely, as much as I commit every year, rarely do I fully meet them. Year after year, I do it because I believe that just in the act of making commitment is my saying that I intend to be faithful to them. And while that stirs desire in me, it doesn't have the staying power throughout the year. After years of doing it this way, my years in the living school reminded me of an experience I had in my mid-30s that actually was the beginning of my understanding of the difference between commitment and devotion. I was in my mid-30s and I was a working mother of 3 children, and I was driving to Tyson's Corner every day. And I was working with an executive coach, and he, one day in passing, I just said, oh, I have to go home and I have to make the diaper bags. I have to get everything ready for the next day. It was like, I was just exhausted, thinking about having to do that. And he said, you must really love them. And I said, well, of course I do. So, but you must really love them to do that day in and day out with a sense of love that they will be cared for with whomever they are with, and they'll have what they need. And it made me see it a little differently, right? Here it was a duty, something I had to do. And now I saw it as an intentional act of love. And I'll tell you, from that day forward, I made my children's lunches till my youngest son graduated from high school. because it was a delight. It was something that became so special, and how I approached that. But it never occurred to me to do that for my KC commitments. So what I believe is the missing ingredient was my heart, right? This home where my heart beats, the place where true connections are made, and where the power of love and passion and devotion are there. And it's not just the commitment, but there's longing, there's desiring, there's wanting, there's loving. It's here that I can say yes to my commitments. It's here that I can find the sustaining energy to be faithful to the commitments, not because I have to, but because I want to. So what kind of shift in you might enable your commitments to have the staying power to last throughout the year? One last thought. There's a wonderful book by Brian McLaren called Do I Stay Christian? And in the first part of the book, he gives 10 reasons why you shouldn't. And then in the next 10, he says why you should. And in the third part of the book, he says this: it doesn't matter whether you stay Christian or not. He says our quest as human beings is to become the most just, kind, and humble version of ourselves that we possibly can, day by day. To practice a faith that expresses itself in love, to lean with others into a new humanity, a new generation, a new kind of humanity, open to every good resource that can help us be born anew. So we at KC are fellow human beings on a journey, a quest to be kind, to be just, to be humble, to walk in faith, to be loving kindness to all who are in our midst. Do we do it perfectly? Not always, right? But it is in the intention that we do. And so I invite you to just take a moment. We're going to have just a moment of silence, to take a moment to think about what it is that as you breathe together, as your heart is open, what it is that this Commitment Sunday means for you.